So thank you all very much indeed, and thank you very much, Marcus, for that introduction. I'm Deputy Director in Defra, leading on EU and international negotiations in relation to fisheries. So my normal day job is negotiating every year with the EU and with Norway and other third countries on the fishing opportunities that would apply to the UK the following year. And in addition, since the referendum, my responsibilities have also been added to, and now I'm sort of leading in relation to fisheries EU exit work. So some may say it's a bit of a poison chalice, but it actually is, for me, as a civil servant, the most exciting time. Whatever one's political views are, and however anyone voted in relation to the referendum, as a civil servant working on probably the most challenging issue of our times is really quite a privilege. And I have to say, it's hard work, it's very complex and very uncertain at times, but it's an amazing opportunity for me to continue to work on that. You have to forgive me if my voice breaks. I've got suffering the ends of man flu, which we all know is quite a terrible disease afflicting only men, but my wife has no sympathy for me whatsoever, having had 3 children. Right, so more serious matters. This is an incredibly important time as we prepare to leave the European Union and build new relationships, and we fully appreciate the opportunities and challenges that you face as an industry. And I think historically, we've tended to sort of lump the industry into one, but we do recognise that there are very different challenges for the processing sector, the catching sector, the distributors, the food service, and retail operators. I mean, many of you run fully integrated business models that rely on global markets and fish for UK businesses and consumers. And up on the slide there are some of the sort of key stats and the numbers that many of you will be aware of. I want to take this opportunity to thank the sea fisheries industry and especially Seafish for your support in helping the fisheries team here in Defra build their understanding of trade in fisheries products. Since the referendum, this has been really a sort of new area for us. It's not something that we've traditionally considered in detail in the past. We've left trade to those that really know what they're talking about, which is you. And but the support that you've provided us has been essential in aiding us to understand trade flows, and most importantly, to be able to get behind the data. I mean, we see numbers from our economists, but that doesn't tell us the whole story. And it certainly doesn't tell us the complexities of how fish moves across the EU and indeed the globe. And one lesson that we've learnt, that it's often a very complex journey, but I'm confident that with the team I have now, which has grown from 0 to about 5, has now much a better understanding than we did a year or so ago. And we certainly have more conversations on trade issues than we ever did before, and I think that's really has to be a good thing. I'm here till lunchtime today, and unfortunately I have to go back to London for meetings, but my team, Matt and Paul, who are in the audience, were here yesterday and will be here throughout the afternoon, and they're the real experts who are very much engaged on the sort of trade issue and sort of taking the sea fisheries and food sort of trade issues back into Defra and back into sort of central government, so that the messages and the concerns that you have are absolutely fully registered. There we go. The Fisheries White Paper, Sustainable Fisheries for Future Generations, published in July this year, charts the course for sustainable and profitable fishing industry. As the White Paper made clear, after leaving the EU, the UK will become an independent coastal state under international law. We will have the right to control and manage access to fish in UK waters, and we will be able to decide who can access our waters and fish and on what terms. We will negotiate access and fishing opportunities with our European partners on an annual basis, and we will seek to move away from the relative stability towards a fairer and more scientific method for future quota shares. We don't yet know the outcome of the UK's negotiations to withdraw from the European Union or the nature of our future economic partnership, but the white paper is absolutely clear that in our view, market access for fisheries products is separate to the question of fishing opportunities and access to waters. The government will be responding to the white paper fairly soon. The white paper also sets out our ambition for fisheries trade. The government is committed to seeking a deep and special partnership with the EU, encompassing the best possible deal for the seafood sector, including shellfish, processing and aquaculture sectors, while ensuring that consumers continue to have a wide choice of high-quality food products at affordable prices. We're also committed to seek continuity in current trade and investment relationships, including those covered by EU third country free trade agreements and preferential arrangements, as well as to secure access to new markets globally. We will seek to control our borders to prevent IUU catches from entering our supply chain, including through continued international cooperation. Our commitment to work with the wider industry continues through the Seafood Industry Expert Working Group and Seafood 2040, a strategic framework for England. And I had the privilege of being part of that work when it first started, and it was absolutely amazing to see the different parts of the seafood industry, both from the catching sector, the processing sector, the retail sector, all come together to look at a holistic approach to sea fisheries. And it was all very ably chaired by Seafish. The Future Partnership White Paper that government published earlier this year, we're quite clear in there. We want to have the greatest possible tariff and barrier-free trade with European neighbours, and also to be able to negotiate our own trade agreements around the world. The government proposal in the Future Partnership White Paper is to create UK-EU free trade area underpinned by a common rulebook on industrial goods and agri-food, reciprocal commitments related to open and fair trade, a joint institutional framework to provide for the consistent interpretation and application of the UK-EU agreement, and a new facilitated customs agreement. And of course, much of these issues are in the press at the moment, and we're all watching them with absolute interest. In there is the common rule book. The proposal will create a UK-EU free trade area, which establishes a common rule book for industrial goods and agricultural products. The proposal on the common rule book means the UK would make an upfront choice to have a set of common rules with the EU on goods, including agri-food. This will cover only those necessary to provide for frictionless trade at the border. Our intention is that it wouldn't go beyond that. The government has been publishing recently technical notices in relation to no deal, and a scenario in which the UK leaves the EU without agreement, a no deal scenario, remains unlikely given the mutual interests of the UK and the EU in securing a negotiated outcome. As I say, we're all following with interest the press reports of discussions taking place at the moment. But I can say that negotiations are progressing, and both we and the EU continue to work hard to achieve a positive deal. However, it's our duty as a responsible government to prepare for all eventualities, including a no deal, until we can be certain of the outcome of those negotiations. For 2 years, the government has been implementing a significant programme of work to ensure the UK will be ready from day one in all scenarios, including a potential no-deal scenario in March 2019. In relation to imports, there will be no change on the day the UK leaves the EU to current import controls or requirements for notifications of imports of live animals and animal products direct from the EU. There will be no change to current import controls and requirements for notifications of live animals, animal products, and high-risk food and feed imported directly from third countries. The only difference is that importers will need to use a new import notification system, which is being developed to take the place of traces. The new system will be available for early testing in January 2019, and will be fully operational for all users by the time that the UK leaves the European Union. I understand that guidance and training materials will be available several months in advance of March 2019, and we will be government will be continuing to keep in contact with those that will be directly affected by this new proposal. In a no-deal scenario, export health certificates, EHCs, will be needed for all animal products and live animals from the UK to the EU, assuming we have listed status. Exports to the rest of the world will, as now, continue to need export health certificates. To prepare for the potential increase in the numbers of export health certificates, work is being undertaken to make the application process simpler and ensure that there is enough capacity amongst appropriately trained veterinarians and authorised signatories to approve the additional certificates. The EU would also require the UK to be a listed third country, and we're confident that the UK meets all the animal health requirements to secure listing. Requirements for trade to third countries outside the EU should not change, although we do expect, obviously, some changes to the wording of documentation to reflect the fact that the UK is no longer a member of the European Union. And again, the government has advised that guidance, training material and updates will be issued, and again, government will be continuing to be working in partnership with those that will be directly affected by those changes. In relation to fisheries, in a no-deal scenario, each consignment or direct landing of fish or fisheries products imported into the UK from the EU will require a catch certificate. The requirement on imports from third countries outside of the EU will remain the same. That is, consignments will need to be accompanied by a catch certificate, as they are now. The EU will require UK exporters to issue catch certificates with each consignment of fish or fisheries products exported to the EU. The details of all of that are set out in the technical notice that the government published, I think it was only last week, in relation to fisheries. As I said before, and as you all know, fish is a globally traded commodity, and the UK is an important producer and importer of fish. It is important, therefore, that as we leave the European Union, we looked to ensure continued market access with our most important trading partners. The government is looking to transition the EU's existing free trade agreements and to put in place new agreements with our closest allies around the world. And I have to say that Defra, through my team and through the Defra trade team, is an active participant in this process. And those teams and my team will continue to represent your interests in those discussions that are taking place in central government. Future trade agreements, new free trade agreements, offer us the opportunity to grow UK exports of fish globally. The Department for International Trade is currently consulting on possible free trade agreements with the USA, Australia, New Zealand, and is also joining the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership. We're considering also wider non-trade aspects of free trade agreements. This would include agreeing text on compliance and support for stopping IUU fishing, addressing capacity and support in international objectives such as the WTO negotiations on Sustainable Development Goal 14. And these issues are often found in EU trade agreements. Autonomous tariff quotas, I know, is something that many of you view as incredibly important, and they do play an important role in providing certainty for processors that adequate supplies of raw material will be available. They provide flexibility to the processing sector to source raw material wherever it is available. The European Commission has very recently come forward with proposals for new ATQs that would apply for the period 2019 to 2020, and my team is in close discussions on those negotiations, and very much informed by the advice and the discussions that they've had with you in the industry. And I think the two key priorities for us have been establishing the correct level at which ATQs should be set, and also reflecting on the safeguard limits, which I think the Commission has not been overly in favour of, and we've been pressing quite hard to have those reinstated. Ursula talked about labour, and we know, and I know from sort of tours around the country, meeting many in the fisheries sector, that labour is an incredibly important challenge, and that affects many businesses in very different ways. Defra has worked with Seafish to feed into the Migratory Advisory Committee in terms of the seafood sector, and we continue to support Seafish in terms of surveys on the processing of labour issues in relation to the processing sector. And it's important that we continue that work, and there are ongoing surveys in relation to labour, and it's important that we can not only continue that work, but we also continue to feed in the views from the industry into the centre of government. And we are very happy to continue to be the conduit of that, and make sure that the challenges and the issues that you face as an industry, and the different challenges and issues that you face in different parts of the industry, are fully recognised. The matter rests with Home Office. They take the lead on this, but I know certainly that Defra ministers are very keen that your voice is heard, and we will continue to do that. And I'm really grateful for the cooperation that we've had with industry on ensuring that those issues are addressed. By way of conclusions, I just wanted to sum up, and this has been obviously quite a wide-ranging sort of presentation from me, because there are so many issues that are live at the moment. As I said before, it is the most exciting time to be in this area, but it is also one of the most challenging. So my final remarks: once the UK leaves the EU, we will be operating as an independent coastal state with all the rights and obligations that go with that. This includes working collaboratively with our European partners on the sustainable management of fisheries and shared stocks. And whilst our role within the European Union will be changing, we're absolutely clear that our commitment to championing sustainable fisheries will continue. And that will be at the heart of everything that we've been doing and everything that we will be doing in the future. Within the UK, we also want a partnership approach, working together with devolved administrations, all parts of the UK fishing sector and NGOs, to secure a sustainable future. We're committed to seeking a deep and special relationship and partnership with the EU, encompassing the best possible deal for the seafood sector. And finally, it's really important that we continue to work together on the range of issues and challenges that we face across the seafood sector. And I want this opportunity to take this opportunity to assure you that we in Defra will continue to play our part, and we want to work closely with you as we prepare for the challenges ahead and leaving the European Union. Thank you very much.